Hi, my name is Kathleen McGowan, and we're going to talk about how to deconstruct a prompt. Let's get started. So first of all, what is a writing prompt? A writing prompt introduces and focuses the writing topic. It also provides clear information about the form and the writing task. The mode describes the writer's purpose for writing. The form tells what kind of document will accomplish that. Again, we have different modes over here. You can see personal, narrative, explanatory, or expository. Those mean the same thing. Persuasive, argumentative, those are pretty much the same, but they're slightly different. Argumentative deals more with facts and supporting an argument based on facts and finding various sources. Persuasive, it uses more persuasive language. This we'll talk about more later. We have responses to literature, as we mentioned before. Those are like literary analysis or book reports, summaries. Research. Research is done on all different levels, but there's such thing as called a research paper. And a research paper is longer and dives in more deeply. Also, business is another mode that you'll use a lot when you graduate. Business mode is more of reports and memos, cover letters, perhaps a resume even. So the purpose of an expository writing is to inform, clarify, explain, define, and/or instruct. So the expository essays are typically guided by a purpose, and that is generally mentioned in the prompt. It has a particular form. It should tell you what the form will be, like an essay or a letter and something like that. And it has a specific audience in mind. Usually it's going to be your teacher, because your teacher is who's grading you. But it also can be read by your classmates and perhaps somebody in your community or other people, politicians, who knows. There are parts of a prompt. So the first part basically introduces the topic or situation and explains the situation. It kind of leads you in to the question. The second part basically does all the work. It describes the writing task for you. You're going to know what kind of mode it is by the way it asks. So let's take a look. It may include kind of writing such as informative and may tell you to inform or to basically tell a story or tell about what you witnessed. That would be narrative. It could take the form of a process essay where you're going to tell about how to do something, or a letter to a newspaper or an editor. It can be a summary. So the steps to deconstruct a prompt. First of all, let's read this prompt. Brothers and sisters do not always get along. That's the introduction. Write an essay that describes the kinds of problems this discord creates in families and the best way to handle a situation like this. So, we read the introduction. Brothers and sisters do not always get along. That's a short introduction. Then, we're going to pick out words in the second half, in the second part of this prompt. And these words that we're going to pick out, they're going to be action words. And they're going to tell us what we need to do. So here we're going to do a T chart. Just like this. It kind of looks like a T. On the top of it, you should write do and then what. So when you go back and you look at the prompt, here's the prompt here. We can find words that tell us what to do. Well, we see write, we see describe. Describe. What does it want us to describe? And then what does it want us to write? So it wants us to describe kinds of problems. And then it mentions this discord. This discord, that means the same as siblings arguing, because it asks about brothers and sisters and the discord, arguing. Sometimes it will help to reword it into a way that you understand it better. You may have to look up a word or two. And then it wants us to tell about the best way to handle a situation, like this. Here's a situation. Siblings are arguing. So, how are we going to deal with this situation? Well, we're going to write an essay, and we're going to talk about the different kinds of problems. Before we write that essay, we're going to do a lot of thinking and brainstorming. Okay, so as we're looking at various prompts, we can know if it's an expository prompt by looking for things that might indicate a why, a how, a what, explain. So let's look at these different prompts here. There are 5 prompts. We read this last one down here. Explain the problems, both personal and societal, that result from obesity. Describe how communication has changed in the last 20 years. Explain the causes and effects of not voting in elections. Explain the causes and effects of prejudice. So can you see the words here? These are action words of what to do. Here they are. Explain, describe how, explain, describe. So let's take a look at this other prompt. More than 40% of adult Americans are considered obese. That's the introduction. In a 5-paragraph essay, that's the form, what does it want us to do? Explain the problems, both personal and societal, that can result from obesity. Explain. Explain what? The problems that result from obesity, both personal and societal. And what are we going to do? We're also going to write a 5-paragraph essay. It's very important to understand the form, because you don't want to write a story when it's asking for information. So if it's expository, that's just information. If it's a narrative, you're going to be telling a story. That's very different than providing information. And the last is persuasive. It's arguing, debating, providing a educated opinion, experience, something that's going to change the mind of someone. So those are different. You should not be writing opinion, basically, in an expository. And an argumentative essay really wants facts, not opinion. But sometimes we need to persuade people with our expert opinion. So we have expository, narrative, and persuasive. Those are the 3 main modes. So let's take a look about these actions. Explain what? Why? Inform how? Clarify reasons. You may define a phrase. You may tell events, describe steps and how to do something. Those are very different than ways to do something. It's steps, which is like a process, an order of events. Convince and argue are very similar but slightly different. You're going to convince, and that will tell somebody maybe why they should do something. You're going to provide reasons. When you see the word why, that means reasons. Usually. When you contrast something, if it asks you to contrast, two things, it's going to ask for the differences. If it's going to ask you to compare two things, it's going to ask for the similarities. It may say to compare and contrast. Let's take a look at this next prompt. Due to the advances in technology and the way people live and work, communication is very different than it used to be. In an essay, describe how communication has changed in the last 20 years. All right, so what does it want us to do? We saw this little introduction up here. Due to advances in technology and the way people live and work, communication is very different than it used to be. All right, there's something to put everybody on the same page and kind of the same understanding. So with this in mind, it's asking you to write an essay. In an essay, here's the form. What does it want you to do? Describe. Describe how communication has changed in the last 20 years. Describe how. It's going to look for ways. So you're going to talk about different ways. And you might even mention ways in your thesis statement. Ways to do what? Ways communication has changed in the last 20 years. So this is all you're going to be talking about, describing communication and how it has changed in the last 20 years. So if you can break down this prompt up here into simple to describe ways, then it might be easier for you to come up and generate ideas and brainstorm and then write a well-organized essay. Remember, for expository prompts, you're going to look for the cues: why, how, what, and explain. There are others too, but these are the most common. All right, just to summarize, the first part, step 1, is reading about the introduction and just some information that may get you on to a foundation. And then you're going to be asked what to do with that information and what to do next. So it's going to ask you to describe, to explain, or some other thing, some other task to perform. And then you're going to think about what kind of information you're supposed to present. In what format? Generally an essay. It may be a letter, it may be a journal entry or something, but you want to make sure that you know exactly what format. So you may want to circle those words in the prompt, but write a T-chart, do and what, and make sure that you are following the directions completely so you can have a well-organized essay. The next stage after you've deconstructed the prompt is to brainstorm, and we'll talk about that next. This is all for now. Bye!